A warm welcome. You're tuned into Eye on Africa. I'm Rochelle Ferguson. These are the top stories on the continent. A promise of reconciliation. Kenya's President Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga agreed to put last year's bitterly contested elections firmly behind them and resolve their differences. Staying in Kenya, the US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson visits Nairobi on the second leg of his Africa tour. We cross live to our correspondent Julia Steers to ask what's at stake on Tillerson's trip. And we bring you a report from our team on the ground in the Malian town of Menaka. There, the threat of terror may loom large, but women say their daily struggle is all about equality. But first, we've come to a common understanding. The words of Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta this Friday during a surprise meeting with the opposition leader Raila Odinga. While calling each other brother, the former arch-rivals vowed to reconcile following bitterly contested elections which turned violent in 2017. Well, it was the first joint public appearance of its kind by the two politicians since 2013, as Lon Bestica explains.
A show of unity between two historical rivals. Just months after clashing over contested election results, Kenya's president and opposition leaders said they had agreed to work together to overcome the country's deep-rooted political divisions.
So we have a responsibility as leaders to be able to come together to discuss these issues and to find solutions. Solutions that will bind our people together, that will unify our country.
Uhuru Kenyatta and Rila Odinga appeared chummy, calling each other brother as they delivered their statements, something which came as a surprise considering the long-standing animosity between the two men. An emblematic opposition figure in Kenya, Raila Odinga ran for president 4 times, most recently in 2017, where he was defeated by Kenyatta. Odinga challenged the results in the Supreme Court, spurring clashes between his supporters and police in which over 100 people were killed. The opposition leader never officially recognized his rival's victory and even held a mock inauguration in January where he appointed himself the people's president. But on Friday, Odinga appeared ready to bury the hatchet.
My brother and myself have therefore come together today to say this dissent stops here.
The meeting took place just hours before US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson arrived in Kenya for a 3-day visit, leading some critics to question the timing of this newfound friendship.
Well, as you just heard in that report, the US's top diplomat Rex Tillerson is currently in Kenya. He's there as part of an African tour which kicked off in Djibouti. Well, earlier Tillerson praised President Kenyatta for his efforts with Raila Odinga. Have a listen.
I do want to congratulate President Kenyatta and opposition leader Odinga on their meeting this morning and their joint announcement. This is a very positive step in our view, and while we know addressing Kenya's ethnic and political divisions will take some time and effort, today both of these men showed great leadership in coming together in the agreement that they signed today. And the United States looks forward to supporting the process that was announced this morning to bring the country together and to address the various national divisions.
Well, look, let's bring you some more on Rex Tillerson's visit to Kenya. Julia Steers is standing by in Nairobi. Julia, a lot's being made of this reconciliation between Kenyatta and Odinga. How's it being viewed there? Is it a PR stunt or is this a genuine friendship that's forming?
Well, it's certainly being met with some surprise and skepticism in Kenya. Analysts say that while it's all well and good that these two high-ranking politicians who have caused or contributed to so much unrest over the last 6 months have now shaken hands and pledged to move forward, that the reality is there is a lot of hard work to be done when it comes to rectifying the divisions that have been sown over the last 6 months. And even before that, you heard both of them touch on the tribal divisions that have plagued Kenya for some time. time, it will take some time to move forward from that. And I think people are anxious for both of them to prove that this is something beyond a PR stunt by actually moving forward with action now and by laying out a clear plan about how they plan to bring their two sides together. Tillerson, for his part tonight, said that it was not a U.S.-encouraged PR stunt. He really gave all credit to Kenyatta and Odinga for getting themselves in the room together. Of course, we do know there has been a fair amount of diplomatic back-channeling from both the U.S. and the U.K. over the last 4 or 5 months. But Tillerson tonight, as you heard there, applauded both of the men for coming together to move Kenya forward. He also did criticize Kenyatta's government, however, for taking some steps that might be considered anti-democratic over the last few months, including shutting down certain media stations and threatening the independence of the judiciary. So Tillerson was not all praise tonight when it came to talking about Kenyan politics.
So Tillerson will be spending a couple of days there yet in Kenya. Just talk us through, if you will, the main themes of his African tour.
Well, in keeping with the general Trump administration policy towards Africa so far, his trip is really structured primarily around security concerns. As you mentioned, he's just come from Djibouti, which is the largest and only permanent U.S. military base in Africa. Before that, he was in Ethiopia, where he reaffirmed Ethiopia's commitment as one of the largest countries contributing peacekeepers across the continent. Tonight in Kenya, he mentioned the American and Kenyan shared commitment to combating terrorism, specifically mentioning Kenya's commitment to fighting al-Shabaab in Somalia. And from Kenya on Sunday or Monday, he'll move on to Chad, where, of course, the U.S. is heavily involved in fighting extremism in the Sahel. So security seems to be priority number one. Also, this evening in Kenya, he touched on issues such as strengthening democracy and deepening economic ties between the U.S. and Kenya, particularly in light of the Chinese investment in Kenya and the region recently.
OK, Julia, with some details on Rex Tillerson's African tour there in Nairobi for us. Thank you. In other news on the continent, the president of Mauritius, Amina Gurib Fakim, is to step down after becoming caught up in a financial scandal. Africa's only serving female head of state is accused of buying jewellery and clothes using a bank card she was provided by a charity. Gurib Fakim will resign after celebrations to mark Mauritius's 50th year of independence next week. The 58-year-old has denied any wrongdoing and has said she refunded the money in question. To Benin next, where police fired tear gas to disperse anti-government protesters in the city of Cotonou this Friday. Now, the opposition say they're concerned about free market reforms proposed by President Patrice Talon. A former businessman elected back in 2016, Talon has said he's trying to boost the nation's dwindling economy. Suggested reforms, though, have triggered public sector strikes which have paralysed the education, justice and health sector. After years of ethnic and religious unrest in the Central African Republic, the National Ballet is now providing some much-needed respite. Performers, both male and female, meet twice a week. Their aim, well, to showcase the country's rich and diverse cultures.
The sound of music rings out across the National Museum in Bangui. Twice a week, men and women come together here to showcase the cultures that make up the Central African Republic. The country may have been plagued with ethnic and religious unrest in recent years, but the National Ballet is trying to be as representative as possible.
It's an arts organization comprising every ethnic group in the Central African Republic, with dances from the 16 regions.
The ballet was founded in 1969 under President Jean Bedel Bokassa and aimed to be truly national, but civil war in 2013 and 2014, plus fighting in Bangui, left the country with no institution to push the arts. The National Museum has even been ransacked.
This arts organization is facing practical difficulties because of lack of funding and financial support.
A lack of resources may make it difficult for the ballet to get its performers together, but the show still goes on in the hope of a better future.
International Women's Day was marked worldwide this week, and France 24 reporters headed to the town of Menaka in northeast Mali to see how it was celebrated there. Well, just 5 years ago, the French army intervened against Islamist militants. Today, the terror threat still looms large, but women say their real struggle is about gaining equality.
In Menaka, International Women's Day is celebrated with music and dancing. In this isolated town in eastern Mali, the threat posed by Islamist extremists weighs heavily on the population. But the battle these women are fighting is for equality.
Women are left out. We're not seen as being as important as men. We want to occupy the same space as men across Mali.
The French army engaged in a military operation in Mali in 2013. 5 years later, the mission goes beyond counter-terrorism. The soldiers aim to help the local population and gain their trust. For International Women's Day, the troops have given out 100 kits for school children.
Women are the most vulnerable. When things go wrong, they always affect women first. Even if the husband leaves, the woman stays with her child.
In this region, women outnumber men. Their well-being has been impacted by the conflict. But International Women's Day has brought more attention to their hardships with the aim of improving their situation.
The Iron Africa team is back in about 45 minutes here on France 24. Up next, Nadia Massey's here with more international headlines. Stay tuned.